Hello everyone and welcome back to Hellstorm Wargaming. I hope you're all having a fantastic day and welcome back to bonus coffee time. Whew. Oh, I have a very nice coffee today. I want to say a massive thank you to Games Workshop for sending this book, but also this book for me to review and tell you all about. And it's going to be great. We're not going to focus on this one today. I'm hopefully going to be doing this one tomorrow on tomorrow's coffee time. Today we're going to be focusing on Chapter Approved Tactical Deployment. And I'm going to spend around 20 minutes, maybe, depending on how long the video is, telling you how great this book is and how good it is for the game. It's got a nice cover. It's got a nice thingy. It's got a cool art on the back. It's got words, and words are quite good, so you know what it says. This book is quite controversial and for a lot of very, very valid points. If you don't know, this book essentially, it's called Tactical Deployment, Master Terrain to Control the Battlefield. And essentially what this does is, when you play a game, normally your terrain is kind of set up randomly. You kind of set it up so it's fair. And also if you go to a Warhammer 40k tournament or an event, then terrain is already preset when you get there, or it's set by you there. The terrain's already there. You kind of might have to set it up depending on the type of deployment. Or essentially, you bring your army, the TO does everything else. Well, this is a little bit different. And this, essentially, what this does, it allows a player to bring terrain according to their army, and they bring their own terrain, and they use that on the board, and players take it in turns, setting up their parts of terrain on their side of the board, and then you play on the battlefield that you've made with your terrain. Now, it's a really interesting concept, and I think it does have potential in some places. But I do think that big tournaments that are like worldwide tournaments such as Las Vegas Open or Nova and stuff like that, or even small, local large events like my events, for example, or the London Grand Tournament, etc., I don't think this is going to work. So where this excels is if you have a new club and the club is just starting out and it doesn't have 10 tables of terrain and it wants to run a 20-man event. What do you do? Well, you make a tournament where your players bring their own terrain to play, which is great because it's good for start-up clubs, it's good for start-up events, etc., and it gets more people playing because the reliance becomes on the people who are actually playing the game rather than the people who are organising the event. Now, there are some drawbacks, and I'm going to talk about them. And obviously, Games Workshop has sent me this to review, but this is my honest opinion, and I am going to be quite harsh with this book, so sorry in advance.
Ah, boy, here we go.
I'm not here to sell you the book, I'm here to tell you my thoughts, and I'm going to tell you just that. Now, the book is very similar to Chapter Approved, as in you have an introduction, you have contents, it tells you the size of the game to play. Then it goes into some more specific details about terrain, about how you bring terrain to the table. And then it has scoring sheets. It has a bunch of missions. It has 3 combat patrol missions, so 500 points. 6 incursion, which is 1,000 points. 6 strike force missions, which is 2,000. And 3 onslaught, which is 3,000 points. So it has quite a few missions in here. Obviously, it tells you the size of the board, so 44x60, hashtag small board gang. And then it tells you a little bit about tactical terrain data sheets. So again, it's also got obviously the missions, and then it's got the core rules in the back. So overall, it's a nice book, it's nice and easy. I want to say, Games Workshop, keep making books like this that I need to buy to take to tournaments, because it is absolutely fantastic. Taking that big core book is an absolute nightmare, and I hate it. That looks nice on the shelf. This looks great in my bag when I'm going somewhere. So essentially, the way this differs to normal missions is that you don't only bring an army list, you bring a terrain list. It kind of explains in the tactical deployment games about setting up a game that depending what size game you're playing, you have to bring so many pieces of terrain that equal so many amounts of points. So we'll talk about Strike Force, but I'll have the rest on screen. Strike Force is you have to bring at least 4 terrain data sheets, and you can duplicate them up to 3 times. You can only have 1 critical feature terrain feature, and then you have to bring at least 150 to 200 points of terrain. So once it tells you about this, it gives you a terrain roster. So this is where you'd essentially write your list of terrain that you bring in. It tells you how to place the terrain. It says choose the attacking defender, choose deployment zone, then set up tactical terrain. Players must set up terrain feature in their collection that has the highest terrain points cost first. The terrain feature that has the second highest goes second, and so on. 2 or more terrain features in a player's collection have the same terrain points cost. The player that can choose their order in which they are set up. So if I have 2 terrain pieces that cost 100 points, I decide which way round. Terrain features must be wholly set up within their own player's territory, so they're half of the board essentially. A player's territory will be shown on the deployment map. If a deployment map for a mission has any terrain markers within a player's territory, the player must set up their first terrain feature wholly within 9 inches of the center of one of those markers. The player's second terrain feature must be set up wholly within 9 inches of the center of a different terrain marker, and so on, until all terrain markers in that player's territory have at least 1 terrain feature each set up wholly within 9. Terrain cannot be set up within 3 inches of the battlefield, cannot be set up within 3 inches of any other terrain feature. Obstacles and buildings cannot be set up on top of objective markers. What? If a hill or area terrain feature is set up on top of an objective marker, move that objective marker so it is on top of the terrain feature, but as close as possible to its original location. So essentially, a lot of things like, I think a way that in chapter approved that that objectives are like specified in terms of terrain. It says you can't have them on terrain. I think the real wording that they intended is that it can't go on top of terrain. It has to go on the ground level. But a hill isn't terrain, so it can just go in the middle. For example, in the middle of a crater or in the middle of woods, you can put objectives there. You just can't put it 3 stories high on a building. If a terrain feature cannot be set up, it cannot be used in battle, and players must use the terrain rules written on their terrain data sheets. And then you go on to selecting your secondaries, declaring reserving transports, and playing the game as normal. It gives you, with each of these missions, we should kind of talk about, let's talk about a random strike force mission. So we're going to talk about take the high ground. I can't take the high ground. So essentially this has a unique secondary. It says score 4 points at the end of the battle round if you control the tallest terrain feature in your territory and the tallest terrain feature in your opponent's territory. The highest terrain feature is measured from the highest point, if two or more, blah blah blah, tied, yada yada yada. So essentially you score points if you hold the biggest terrain feature. So a lot of these missions are built around the terrain. So the missions refer to terrain pieces essentially, and you have to like go and grab them, and it's about capturing real points rather than just random objectives on the board. And you can see it tells you to set up the terrain piece, the objectives as normal. But also you have these new markers, so you have to set up terrain, one in the middle of your deployment zone, one in the middle of your opponent's essentially. So you take it in turns. So you'd set up the terrain on your half in a normal, let's call it Dawn of War style deployment, and there must be one at least in the middle within 9, and at least within the middle of 9 there, and more than 4 inches away. So it refers to that about mission objectives, about some of them being endgame or progressive, and some of them related to terrain pieces. And some of them say control a terrain piece. So it says, for the purpose of such missions, if a terrain feature is an obstacle, it is controlled in the same manner as any objective marker. Terrain is an area terrain. If it's instead controlled by whichever player has the more models from their army with the objective secured ability, wholly on or within that terrain feature. If there are no models with objectives secured, it's controlled by the player who has the most models. So, again, it's a kind of adding this extra level of essentially controlling the battlefield. It's not just about the objectives, it's also about the buildings that are on the board as well, which I think is a really interesting mechanic, and it adds another layer of complexity, but also it's kind of optional. It's optional complexity. Kind of the real kicker though, I want to say, is that first thing you're thinking is I'm using basilisks, so I'm going to bring 3 L-shaped buildings to hide everything, and then they can't charge me on whatever. Monster. The kicker is, and I don't want to say it's purely to sell terrain kits, but it kind of seems that way, is that tactical terrain has tactical terrain data sheets, and there's going to be an example on screen now for the storage vein. And the terrain has a category, it has special rules, and it has special abilities, and it has terrain points. So, for example, the storage vein is 40 terrain points. It has breachable, defensible, light cover, and scalable, which is all stuff that we're already kind of aware of because it's just normal terrain traits that we've seen. It has a terrain ability. At the start of your shooting phase, you can select one unit that is wholly within this terrain feature. Till the end of the phase, up to half of the models rounding down in that unit or grenades can resolve attacks with them instead of just one. In addition, each time a model is wholly within terrain feature makes a ranged attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. So it's quite cool. It's like you bite with points. It gives your army a buff, which is kind of like a thing that people are really worried about. The main problem is I wanted to do a battle report for this, and I wanted to show off this pack in its true form and say, look, this is how it's played and this is how it works. But I only have the one tactical terrain data sheet, and it's for the storage vein. I don't have any of the other data sheets. So in this book, I don't have any of the terrain points. I don't know which terrain I can use, which is defined as tactical terrain. But it does say at the top of this page, into tactical deployment missions, you will need to gather a tactical terrain collection. Each terrain feature in your collection must be described by a tactical terrain datasheet. These can be found in this section or in any of the Battlezone products that are available separately. Each tactical terrain datasheet contains the following information. But it's kind of like, you have this one as an example, and I'm like, this is a really good example. I wonder what the other ones do. And then it goes on to the terrain rules. So I don't know if this is a mistake are accidental or they just didn't want to. But this book doesn't contain the rules for terrain that you're allowed to use in the game. So I can't do a battle report using this because I don't know what terrain I'm allowed to use or how many points it is. But what we can gather is all of the new terrain that they are selling this weekend is designed for this, and I imagine all the stuff that's been reboxed or is brand new will have a tactical terrain datasheet in there, and then you'll be able to play with that. So there's a lot of downsides to this. Is one that if I want to play one of these missions, I've got to use the specific terrain. I might already have the specific terrain, but I probably don't have the data sheets for it, so I've got to go and buy another product off the shelf, and then I'll have the data sheet, so it'll show me the type of terrain I can use, and I'll have the points. But if I don't have that type of terrain, I've got to go out and buy it, so I've got to buy Games Workshop terrain. And you guys know that I do love the Games Workshop terrain, because I have a lot of it, but I also like game map terrain. And I like TT combat terrain, and I like terrain that I've made myself with my 3D printer. You know, I'm experimented to get terrain. The problem is with all their third-party terrain that it doesn't work in here, which I think is a big kicker. Because not only do I need to buy a book, not only do I need to take my own terrain to a game, I also can't use the terrain I've made at home, and I can't use third-party terrain. Now I understand that you can't balance that because the whole point is you buy essentially a terrain piece is now a model piece. It's like part of your army is the terrain, but I can't use third-party stuff, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. So not to give it too much of a scathing review, I think the idea of the missions are really cool, and I think capturing buildings as well as objective markers is quite interesting. I think the list building side of terrain is not my cup of tea. I don't think this is going to catch on at events because, at like big large events, like notable events, purely because of the issue of you've got to use pure Games Workshop terrain off the shelf. You need to have the data sheet for it, and lugging that to an event and you got like 1,000 players with not only a big tray full of their models, they've also got another tray full of terrain. It's just going to be an absolute nightmare. But I do think they're onto something with something like this. Again, the type of missions in there are quite cool. I think you're probably better off as a casual player. What I'd do is I'd set the terrain up fairly, then roll for your mission, then arrange it so it works for this and play like that. Personally, I don't like the idea of buying terrain to go with your army because I think it's another level of balance that they're not going to be able to manage. And again, I'm trying to see the positive sides of it, the way you could use it, but I don't think this is going to catch on at large events, so I wouldn't worry too much. And I think it does have its plus sides for casual games, but for competitive play, I mean, no. No. So there you go, there's my thoughts on the tactical deployment. Again, a lot of people are not very happy with it for rightful reason. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you going to be picking up one of these? Are you interested in giving it a go? Again, if you're a new club, you've got the venue, you've got the battle mats, but you don't have the terrain, then maybe you can start looking at like running little events like this and getting your players to bring some. Start with some like combat patrol, because so for combat patrol, you only need 2 pieces each. For a little league where you're building like, if you build like, you could even do this for like Crusade, you know, you could be like, oh, we're infecting this planet, I'm a Xenos, so I'm bringing these cool type of terrain. But again, the problem is they only make Imperial terrain, so even if you wanted to do something thematic, you could make them look like your army, but again, it's going to be Unitorum crates and it's going to be L-shaped buildings, so I don't know. I think I will play this on the channel, but again, it'll be a case of setting up the board and then making the mission fit the board, or vice versa. Rolling the mission, then making a board that works for it. But it's just no points and no terrain data sheet, so I can even have a look at what they do. You know, I've got to go out and buy the other data pack. Again, full disclosure, Games Workshop sent me this to review, so obviously I can just go and buy the data pack, and that's fine. But I don't know. As a consumer, it's kind of annoying. But there you go. There's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe. Again, tomorrow we're going to be looking at the Crusade Beyond the Veil, so make sure you tune in for that. I'll be premiering at 10 AM. And yeah, thank you very much. Subscribe if you can. If not, have a great day, and hopefully we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye now.
Hello, small board gang. I'm Hellstorm Dude. Today I'm going to be telling you all the different things that we sell on hellstormwargaming.co.uk/shop and how you can support the small board gang in the great wars to come. The Small Board Wars anthology coming soon. I want to tell you about our great web store where you can actually pick up a limited edition shirt right now. This limited edition shirt is to show your support of the firstborn Jim and train your way to 2 wounds. This shirt was actually limited once upon a time ago. You can't buy this anymore, and you won't be able to buy this shirt come 30th of September. That means you've got less than a week to order it. So it's available in a range of colours. It's available in a t-shirt, or also if you Chad enough, like me, then you can wear it, get a vest top and show off their guns, you know, 2 wounds, 1, 2. Don't want a t-shirt, don't want a merch, I understand, you know. Can't all be cool like me. We can also get some objectives. We've got a couple left in stock. We've actually got some new designs coming. Hopefully they're going to be in stock next week. So let's go. These objectives, you can get your little 40mm ones where you forget where they are, you knock them everywhere, and you have to measure from the edge like some chump. Well, these lads, the 40mm in the middle, you can just stand on the objective. You're within 3 inches because that's what range it is. It's 3 inches. Also, you can get some dice. We've got some dice on sale. People have been asking for months. We've got 5 different colours. We've got pink horror, looking beautiful. We've got blue horror, looking even more beautiful. We've got eldritch purple, mystical. We've got Gyrin green. Well, you go up or left, he's been popular. We also got some orange, which are definitely not named after a cake or a biscuit. If you need somewhere to put those dice, we also sell dice bags. There you go, look at all this, it's great. You can find all this at hellstormwargaming.co.uk, and it's all PayPal secure. I don't want your credit card number, I just want your PayPal balance. It's fair. Speaking of PayPal balance, just for the first 10 people who put an order in today, and use the code Hellstorm10, they'll get a discount. I mean, what's not to love? So the first 10 people, Hellstorm10, get a discount. What's not to love? If you want to grab yourself a new t-shirt, it's only available until the 30th of September. After that, you can't order it again, so don't even try it. It's a made-to-order run. So grab yourself a t-shirt today, grab yourself some dice, or grab yourself some objectives and support the channel. And support Hellstorm Dude in the Great Wars, the Small Board Wars, which will be coming at your screens very soon. Thanks to Hellstorm Wargaming for letting us have this ad space, because I am also Hellstorm Wargaming. If you're a business and you want to advertise some stuff in this area while people are deploying, like down there or wherever it is, then email is in the description below. Let's go. Go watch the game.